I was trying to figure out who knew 10 people, right? Like, like who's going to do that, you know? You got 7 Leroy, congratulations. That's good. Faithx is back here and in the building. It's a bit bigger. It's the Daga Auditorium, so welcome to each and every one of you. I'm hoping that for the time that we spend together, that we'll do so hoping to learn a little bit more about God. When I was, macroing faith status, faith walk, that is, I remember it was about April thereabout, she was painting her name. So I see her doing this thing, right? I was like, boy, note. I just let faith is like a sister to me, yeah? And I see her painting her name, and I'm like, boy, my friend conceited or what? Like, what's she really doing, right? Only to realize she was setting the stage for something impactful. And turns out she was making the sign, ladies and gentlemen, Faith was making the sign Faithx. And I wanted to make one suggestion. Rickland said that one of the concepts he's thinking about for the X is excites, a faith that excites. I wanted to posit one of my concepts, a faith that exudes. In that faith should come out of you. It should be that faith that moves others, but it should be coming from you. Today I wanted to talk about a God worth loving. That's at best the subtext of this entire Faithx journey. And a God worth loving, in my mind, needs to be justified. And the question that I am preoccupied with is, why is God a God worth loving? The first reason that comes to my mind is that God is a God worth loving because he confronts us. When you take Faithx, for example, and the sort of topics that we've been having since May to now, a couple of things come through very clear to us, that Faithx is about confronting you to face the aspects of yourself that will lead you to make changes in that area. There's a story of how I think confrontation is put in the Bible that really brings it home for all of us. You guys remember the story of the demon-possessed boy in the Bible? Mark, thank you, Uncle. Mark 9:24. So here's how the story goes. There's a father who had a son. He was demon-possessed, and the father took his son and he brought him to the disciples. Apparently, Jesus and 3 other disciples, they took a hiatus to go to spend some time. And then on Jesus' way back, there was a bit of a commotion. And Jesus trying to figure out what's happening. And then Jesus talked to the father and said, hey, tell me what's happening. And the father said to Jesus, well, my son is demon-possessed. I brought him to your disciples and they could not. And Jesus was interrogating, like, well, how long has this been happening to him, of a child? And then the father describes the son's situation in a way that blew my mind. The father said, the dumb spirit that's in him is what is causing him to throw himself and to misbehave. If you read the text, the father does not say that my son is the one doing all of this. The father says it's a spirit in him. Here's what I recognize is important about confronting, a God who confronts. He does not address you, he addresses the spirit that's in you. My wife has a good way of doing this. Every now and again when we're in a little moment, right? She doesn't say, Kerry, you selfish. She says, that was a selfish moment. I like that you. Because if she said I was selfish, we would have had it. But God, and oftentimes when God confronts us, we tend to get offended. But the reality is God is not trying to get at you, he's trying to get at the spirit in you. You remember when he was talking and he was telling them, yeah, listen, I will die in 3 days, and Peter was like, over my dead body. And then he said to Peter, what? Satan, get thee hence, because you take no pleasure in the things of God, but only things of men. God addressed the spirit, not the person. Because this is spiritual warfare. And I was thinking about a God who is worth loving, in the lens of a friend who is willing to confront you. Proverbs chapter 27 verse 6 says that faithful are the wounds of a friend and deceitful are the kisses of an enemy. When God chooses to confront us, what he normally does is he gets under our skin to help us to see ourselves. And I realize one of the reasons why our lives may be in shambles, or at least we may be struggling, is because we're around people who don't confront us. We have friends, and you know what? Here's the real challenge. The real challenge is we like the people who don't confront us. You want to have as many yes men around you as possible. You're not trying to be confronted. So you know what? All your friends, yeah boy, yeah girl, you did that. You know, everybody genuine. Nobody says, hey, I didn't like how you spoke. Your tone was a bit off. And this is the iron that sharpens iron, because God is the iron that will sharpen us. And I pray that we in this moment of Faithx, that we will do one thing: learn to confront those close to you. Because that's how you will help them grow. But what should be our response when we are confronted by God? Our response should be one of conviction. I had a couple run-ins with the law, and I say that in actuality, I'm not exaggerating. I had a couple run-ins with the law. I was driving on my way to collect somebody from the airport. And if you know how Piarco Airport is, there is the roundabout, and every now and again the officers come and they tell you, don't park too long, keep it moving, yeah? But that was in the days when I didn't really understand, the laws of the airport road. And for those of you who went to collect someone at the airport and the flight delayed for some reason, you would have said, well, I ain't trying to pay that $8 per hour for the park. So you know what you go do? You go park on the other side of the road. Just before you make the turn to come in, you go, everybody lining up on that side. So I say, well, I go duck in. So I take our duck in there and I park up with everybody. And then about 1 minute later, I had to say, wait, like they're marking me or what? So when I see the police stopping the man behind me, I say, well, I go ease out. When I ease out now, I go in, and as I go out, 2 police vehicles, they stop in the middle of the road in front of me, come out with his gun like I'm some criminal. I have no drugs in the car, you understand? And he come out, say, hey, you on the side here, go on the side. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at that point in my life, this was my first stop by the police. First time I've been stopped by the police. So all I know is how I see people getting stopped by police on TV. So I'm running through my head like, Lord, what am I going to do here? So my first thing is, well, you had to come with the car, put your hands up, because you're guilty, right? So I make no joke to you. This is exactly what I did. Police officer coming to me with the gun. I come with the car, my hands up. And he say, hey, what are you doing? Go walk in the car, boy. Listen, I never sweat so much. I was confronted. And then I'm in the car. Now at that time, I'll let you know, I only had my Dominican license. Didn't have my Trini license yet, and I was driving a USC car. It's an illegal situation. Yeah. So, officer comes to the car. I say, well, let me see your documents. I say, well, officer, I'll be honest with you. I don't have no documents in. I have my Dominican license here. I was just studying for exams. I decided to just come down and pick up a friend. I give him the officer the story. I have no documents. He said, well, stay right here. Tell somebody come and bring the documents for you. I said, what? All your stink, boy. So I said, you to bring the documents for me. So, okay, cool. I said, well, officer, here's the thing. I think at the time too, I'm not sure. I have to confirm for myself. I think my battery had died or I didn't have credit. I can't call nobody. I say, officer, here's the deal. Nobody gonna come and help me out. I was ready to take jail. Because he said to me, wait, what? You have no documents? You're looking for lockup? I said, all right, cool. So ladies and gentlemen, I was ready for jail. And then I tell him where I'm from up in the campus there, so he probably deduced from the story I gave him that I'm from campus, so he had deduced Seventh-day Adventist. Listen, this officer, his eyes red. So I freed him. And he says to me, you 7 days? say, yes. No, listen, I'll be honest with you. I was going to tell him no. If this was the last days, I didn't make the cut. So he said, I'm 7 days too. You go ahead. I kid you not, the grace of God. Now you would swear, well, the Adventists have a pack and Adventists do get ticket, but I sure somehow they get ticket already. Right? But here's the thing, I was confronted in that moment. And in that moment, I tell the man the truth. He caught me in my wrong. I say I was wrong. And guess what happened? You get set free. Oftentimes when God confronts us, the response shouldn't be aggression. The response should be conviction. And so that is the God worth loving, because he confronts you in a way that he's not coming after you. He's coming after the spirit that led you to make the wrong. But when he does that, your response should be, Lord, I know I have sinned. That's reason number one why God is a God worth loving. Reason number two is God is a God worth loving because not only that he confronts us, but that he covers us. You guys know about the guy named Balaam. Now, Balaam has gotten a bad rap. Balaam is the guy that we know as the person who was trying to, with the Balaam, the little talking donkey, you know that Balaam story? Now, for those of you who don't know the Balaam story, you would recognize that Balaam was charged by a guy named Balak to curse the Israelites while they were in the wilderness, while they were on their way to thing, right? And it turns out, no matter what happened, Balaam could not have cursed them. He could have only blessed them. Now, I would let you know, when you read the story of Balaam, Balaam is a good guy. Moses didn't know him, but apparently Balaam only said what God asked him to say. Now, what interests me about the story of Balaam is not Balaam's journey with the donkey. What interests me with the story of Balaam is how the words that God gave Balaam to speak about a people who currently was unthankful. So, this is Numbers chapter 22, where Balaam is being hired. Numbers 21 is where God had to bring out the fiery serpents to bite the people for speaking against him. One chapter later, when you're looking at the words God is speaking about the people who was just speaking against him, is like he is speaking for them in their favor. He says to Balaam, hey, don't touch these people because they are a blessed people. And then he goes on to say something in Numbers chapter 23 verse 5. When you check it, he says that he has beheld no iniquity against Israel, and he has seen no sin in Jacob. Something along those lines. And I was like, that's a lie. Because one chapter before, look at this, that they're murmuring against God. The book of Numbers means the book of murmurings. It's the book of complaints. In the same book, when we're complaining about God, it's the same book where God is covering the people. Now, I don't understand that, because in a marital context, rule number one is you don't bad talk your spouse in public. Even if you're addressing a matter, you don't switch sides. And I suspect God does that really well. Because if you and God dealing with something, he not bad talking you out there. And we have a God, right, who even if you sin, here's what he'll do. He will make sure you're covered and protected. God is trying to cover us. The devil is trying to uncover us. Here's why I know that. You remember when Jesus was being tempted in the wilderness? When he was led into the wilderness to be tempted? When the devil came to him, the text says that the devil appeared. What the Greek says is that the diablos came. Diablos is the name given to the devil, but here's what it really means. Diablos means the slanderer. Now, you know the difference between libel and slander? What is libel? Libel is you bad talking somebody, but you're writing it. What is slander? You bad talking somebody, but with your mouth. When Jesus was being tempted in the wilderness, the slanderer came. Now, why would the slanderer come? The slanderer came to do one thing, to see if it was possible for him to catch Jesus in sin. 3 temptations, no need to know what the 3 temptations were, nor the sequence of them, but it's important to understand the reason why the slanderers come. The slanderer came to see if he could find an occasion to embarrass God. Because look, you send your only begotten son to think, and look, he turning stone into bread. So God sent his son, and in that moment of test, the slanderer came. Now, it's funny that all the devil is looking to do is embarrass God's people. Stay with me. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 9, this is Revelation chapter 12, verse 1 says that there is a war that was in heaven, and Michael and the angels fought, and then the devil was cast down. And when on the devil's way down to earth, a voice came out from heaven, and the voice said, "Woe unto the inhabitants of the earth, for the devil, for the accuser of the brethren is come down to accuse them day and night." Heaven felt sorry for us on the devil's way down. Because the person who is down here with us is the slanderer. There is a force looking to make sure that somebody's name get called. And let me tell you why I'm particularly concerned about this. Because gossip is so easy in this Caribbean context. You always hear somebody name calling, "Hey, you see that girl there, boy? Hear the story I have on she. You see him there, boy? I know his story." You know? And instead of trying to cover them, we uncover them. But we have a God that as much as the devil is looking for an opportunity to embarrass us, we have a God who's looking for an opportunity to embrace us. That he's not trying to put your business out there, and he's trying to make sure that you have a clean slate, and so much so that he's trying to cover us. Guess what he did? He sent his son to cover you with his life. Now that's a God worth loving. Now when God covers us, what should be the response? Our response should be one of courage. That's because God covered you. You have cover that you could keep on fighting the good fight because you have someone who has your back. May we be reminded that God has our back. The third reason and the last reason why God is a God worth loving is not only that he confronts us and that he covers us, but also that he considers us. Now this one is real for me, because when I was studying for the PMP certification on the recommendation of Ham Delton, the PMP certification, that is the Project Management Professional certification, it's built on 10 knowledge areas, and one of those knowledge areas is schedule management, how to manage your schedule. And in the development of a schedule, there are some key things that are necessary. They tell you how to sequence tasks, 1, 2, and 3. And so while I'm studying schedule sequencing, I come across this concept, but it became real to me because I started to look at creation through the lens of schedule management. And I recognized that what happened on day 1 needed to happen on day 1 because day 2 needed what happened on day 1. Y'all with it? So as much as you think you might have come late into the picture, God brought you right when you needed to be here because everything that came needed what happened before. Y'all with it? And so in project management, they call that a mandatory dependency. And when I figured out that God is a project manager himself, I say, wait a minute, PMI didn't make this, God did this. In the sense that when God brought us here, he was thinking about you from day 1. He considered you from day one, and the reason why he went through this systematic process to put everything in place wasn't because of the fish. He put everything in place because of you. And he considered you from day one. And so the message of creation is a God who thinks about us ahead of time. And so when you're worrying about whether or not what you might eat or drink, that's why God says to you, don't worry, I was thinking about how you would overcome this current challenge that you have. So, guess what happens? When you're going through a challenge, just like the children of Israel, in the book of Jeremiah 29:11, what does it say? I know the thoughts that I think towards you, thoughts of peace to give you an expected end. And not of evil, and to give you an expected end. Here's what the challenge in that text was. We serve a God who does not only think ahead for us, we serve a God who thinks presently for us. Because it doesn't say, I know the thoughts that I thought about you. It says, I know the thoughts that I think. What is think? English teachers, present or past? Think is what? Present, which says God is thinking about you now. And so he didn't just consider you ahead of time, he considers you now. And you might think that what it is you're going through is you the first one and the only one going through it, and you're the only one carrying your load. But no, God says, I'm thinking about you now, and I'm creating a way for you to escape. That's a God worth loving. Now, what should be your response when God considers you? Your response should be what? Comfort. Because it takes some real comfort to know that God thought about my circumstance, and God is seeing me in my current struggle, and he's creating a way for me to overcome it. That's comfort. That's peace. And when you see people worrying, it's a lack of peace. And God says, listen, I will confront you, and I will cover you, and I will also give you that consideration to let you know, hey, it will be okay. When we look at what's happening in our world today, and you're seeing they might soon raise the gas price, and you bracing that because you just buy what? You just buy premium, you don't buy super. We become concerned about the cost of living. We become concerned about our relationships. We become concerned about a whole bunch of things, our work life. And God is saying, listen, do not worry about that. Because I have you. And so when you're trying to explain your faith to people, you could explain your faith through your conviction. You could explain your faith through your courage. But you could also explain your faith through the comfort that you get because of a God who not only sees your wrong, he covers it, and he also considered you ahead of time. When we think about the theme of a God worth loving, may we find rest in this message, that we have a God who confronts us, who covers us, and considers us.